Hello, this is Cousin Russ. This is a return episode of using the new plugin for Family Tree Maker, Family Book Creator. And I thought I would share with you an experience that I just had this morning. This morning I saw a Facebook posting or a message to me that my first cousin, twice removed, a 7-year-old, was interested in her family history. You can't imagine how exciting that email was. So I figured that the easiest way for me to show her that or answer her question is to create a book. And that's what I'm going to do. I created a book, and let me get rid of the screen, and I'm going to do it in Family Tree Maker 2014 with the new plugin. To get to the plugin, I go to Tools, I get to Plugins, Export with Plugins, Family Book Creator. Now, I already created the book, but I want to edit it. And I'm doing this because this is a young person, and I don't want a lot of information on video. So what I did is I created it. And if I go to the preference, I can load settings. Now, what this is going to do, it's going to load the settings for the book that I created. And I'm going to use this fourth book that I created. I was playing around to see how it worked. So I have now loaded the book that I already created, and I'm just going to go through some of the settings because there's some detail that I have made adjustments for. I just want to talk about it. My earlier book, I created all generations. In this case, I only want to go back 10 generations. I do that because actually when I ran the report earlier, it was 23 generations and it was 400 pages. I didn't want to do that. So I'm going to create the title page, and I don't have to type anything out here. That creates my, so I don't have as many typos as I normally would. And this is because it's in brackets. When it's exported to Microsoft Word or an RTF file, rich text formatted file, it will fill in this information for me. And I noticed that when I actually printed the book that I actually had typos, and these are typos that I made and not necessarily those that would have been made had the program done it, but these are my typos. So I created, all I'm going to have on this page is the short story for Savannah and who compiled it, and there's all the copyright information. Again, you'll see that there's the places where Microsoft Word will fill in fields for me. And the dedication is not very difficult. I took very little time to do that, but it'll be inside the cover. And the forward is, I just added one sentence because I liked the text that was here. You can edit it to meet your own needs, but I just added one line. And I'm also going to add, if you can help me fill in the blanks, please let me know. Because I do that because I use 5 underscores for unknown names, and I know that when this book is created, I will have a lot of them, and people who will get a copy of this book may know those names. The table of contents will be generated within Microsoft Word when it's generated. Here's an introduction, and I didn't add anything to this introduction because I liked the format of how the program gave me information in here, so I'm going to leave it at that. The main part. Now here's where you really have to spend some time. My first book I did all generations, but this book is only going to be for 10 generations. when I ran this book the first time, I actually went back 23 generations, and that's going to be too overwhelming. So it's going to be the ancestors of Savannah, and it'll go back 10 generations, which will get me to where our ancestor came from England will be included in that book. And under items include items to include individuals to include, items to include, and options. So the individuals are going to be Savannah and 10 generations, items to include. I'm going to include photos, I'm going to include grandparents. Now, the only information that I want in this book now, after I've looked at it once, is AKA, there's not many of them, and I'm using preferred only because there may be multiple, and I'm going to exclude all sources and fact notes that are in my file. And I'm doing this because this is for a 7-year-old, and I don't want to confuse her with all the citations, 400 pages worth of citation if I printed this whole thing out. So I'm not going to confuse her with that. Birth locations, I'm going to use preferred. I'm going to exclude facts. I'm going to exclude sources. And I'm going to uncheck all of these other things because I just want birth, death, and burial facts. And as I select them, and I'm glad I'm doing this, when I selected it, I'm going to exclude sources and any notes and use preferred only because of the way I enter my data in my database. Now, if I go down to partner, I don't have any partners, but I've excluded all because I don't want a lot of confusion going on here. I go down also into the children listing, and I double check all of my settings, and I'm not including source information, but I do want to include birth, death, and marriage information. Exclude sources, excluding notes, which I have in my file. I just don't want to include them. And then I'll go over to options, create family headlines, which I do, and hyperlinks. So, and then the index I want to include, this is all data that's going to be in the book in this form, in this order. And I'm going to include an index of places. It gives me an index of where people had an event. And I'm going to include an index of people listed, grouped by last name or surname. My preferences will be Microsoft Word. Do not insert. There's a pull-down menu. Do not insert source citations, which I don't want to have. But I have choices. I could make my citations as footnotes or endnotes or use embedded source citations. So you have choices. Again, for this purpose of this book, I'm not going to include any source options. And again, while I'm on this screen, I just want to remind you that if I make changes in the settings, I can save the settings and I can reload the settings, which is what I did. I already had this file created, and all I'm doing now is editing it. I have options on how I want the names and the style, images, and fonts. Now, I made some changes in the font size because the default settings was 12. And again, this is for a young person. Now, if I were to create this book for her great-grandmother, I would change this from 10 to 12 because her eyesight isn't what it might be. But I want to keep this book down to a reading size for a 7-year-old. I also reduced the heading size from 6 to 14, this one from 14 to 10. So I have made some adjustments in the font sizes, and I've done it right here. Page layout, I used the default, and privacy, I'm not excluding anybody. So I reviewed the items to include, which are here, the preferences, how it's laid out, and I have a bunch of choices. And now I'm ready. I'm going to save these settings in case I want to do it again. I bring it up, and I'm just going to increment this book to number 5 because I did make some changes. So I'm going to save it, and now I'm going to create the book. So I click on creating the document, and I'm going to, it's asked me for a file name, and I've done this before, so I'm going to make this revision number 3, and I'm going to save it. So now I am now creating it, and it's now working through this, and this will probably take a little over a minute, probably about 95 seconds to create this book. And you're watching it live, and so you see how long it takes, and it takes several passes through the file. It's working on family 6 of 89, so there's 89 families in this file, and it is generating, it's working on generating an RTF file, and I want to go through that once it's been generated, go through a couple things that I've learned that may not be obvious to first-time user. I know I wasn't, but so I'm working on, I'm generating it right now so you can see what it looks like, and I've edited it, and so you can see how I did it. I can save it. So if I'm not happy the way it looks on the screen, I can go back and edit it. And my editor, my wife, caught some typos, and which is why I'm doing it again, so that the final product will be acceptable. And I ran a draft copy, and it does look good except my 2 typos. But I always have typos, which is why I have given my wife a gross of red pens so that she can mark up my mistakes. And I'm just babbling on while the book is being generated, but it's being generated, and from start to finish, from my first version till I had the printed copy in my hand, bound by my local office supply house, was probably less than 2 hours from the time I started until I had the printed copy in my hand. Okay, the file is generated, and it is now ready for me to look at. So that doesn't look too bad, except if I go down here a couple pages, you will see that the forward is okay. The table of contents is not. Don't panic. That's because I have to go to edit this. I'm going to click on View, Edit Document, and this is Microsoft Office 365, and that's what I'm using. So there may be some differences between what I have and what you may see on your word processor. So I'm in the edit mode, and I am going to hit Control A and then hit F9, which is what that says right here. And right now, if you look down at the bottom, it is now processing and doing the updates. It's taken all those special markings that are in the RTF file, those items that I showed you that were in the pointed arrows, left and right pointing arrows. Those are now fields that are now going to be populated and updated so that it's going to come out looking. So this table of contents is going to look really nice, and that you'll see. I just want to point out that in your word processor, you have to be in an edit mode, and then you select all, and then there you go. I now have a beautiful table of contents, which I didn't have to type because I would do page numbers all wrong, I'm sure. Now I'm going to change the view to show what it really looks like. I'm going to go into the view edit mode. I'm going to the read mode. And when I do that, it's going to bring me back, and this has 18,000 words in it, and I didn't have to type but a couple. Then of course I had typos. Now I'm just going to click out of click over here so you could see without the edit mode. So there's the introduction, and here's the beauty of it. This is the first part of the pictures. I need to get pictures of all these folks, and I have some that I just haven't put into my file. But here is what she's going to see, including pictures, and the book that I am printing that I will take to her will be in color. Only the pages with pictures on them will have color on them. But if I go down here, I've got 109 pages, which is what I expect, and I'm just going to scroll real quickly so you get an idea of what's in it and what it's at the end. But here's at the end, I do have a bibliography. So I have included that. I just haven't put the details in source citations. But someone looking at this book know that I did a little work doing some research on the file. And here's the index of places. So if they want to see who had an event in Anne Arundel County, Maryland, they can see it right here. Or all the locations, and there's an index page that tells them what page they can find that person on. And I continue to scroll down here, and I will come into the index of names. Now I set it up to be double column for the index of names. It's an option. So there is my completed 109-page book. And what I will do now, because I'm going to take it to my local store and print it, have them print it and bind it for me, I'm going to export it as a book, and I'm going to export it to a PDF file. So that is Family Tree Maker and using the Family Book Creator, and that's a book that I'm actually going to print. I will, when this broadcast is done, I'm going to copy my PDF file to a flash drive and take it to my local store, and in a couple hours I will go pick it up. How cool is that, and easy to do? It's a great feature. I like the plugin. I hope you have a chance to play around with it. Go to familybookcreator.com, and Stefan is a great contact person, and go to their website. They've got some training material for you. I'm just on and that plugin. Have a great book creating day. Bye-bye.